For my system, I have done essentially a continuation of the previous project where I looked at Ableton Live, and so for my system I've made it entirely inside of Ableton Live. I'm using this session view and I've arranged clips that I've composed for different instruments, for different playbacks at different times. One of the main limitations I talked about in both the presentation and the document was that Ableton, performance with Ableton is quite limited when you don't have a controller. So if I was just using my laptop, it's kind of hard to go and click on stuff and control different parameters. So I have been using this Arturia Minilab MK2 as my MIDI controller, which comes with 16 dial controls, 8 pad controls, a keyboard, a pitch bend, a modulation wheel. So already that allows for much more in terms of control and performance within Ableton, as I'm able to map all of them to different elements inside of here. So for the mapping, if you want to have a look, these are all of the mappings I have done in total, and I will go into more detail about them in just a sec, but I just want to talk about some of the limitations around this system. So for the final performance, I might not opt to use something like this Arturia because it limits me to only 16 dials and 8 pads, which for me, I'm already using up all 8 pads and most of the dials. So if I was doing a big group performance where I might be processing more MIDI or audio than just my own, I would probably need more control for that. So I might consider using something like the Push 2 or 3 with the Uni rather than this controller. Also, one of the other limitations is that it is very centered towards house music, which is fine for me and my personal performance and when I do the improvisation test. But for a group performance, if we are not opting to do house or dance music, then this sort of a system is not really ideal for that. I have tried to incorporate some elements of sort of textural and atmospheric moments, but again, it is mainly based around loop-based, beat-based music, which might be an issue for the group performance, but for the improvisation test should be fine. So let me just talk also about what these are actually doing then. So for the pads over here, there's 8 of them. The first 6 are controlling drum sounds. So this first one turns on the kick, which you can hear there. This one will add an open hi-hat on the offbeats. This one will take away the kick but keep the open hi-hat. And that will add all elements of the drum kit, so rim shot, snare, and a clap. This will take away the kick but keep every other element. And then this one will turn off everything, essentially. So already in those 6, there's a lot of performance that can be done with the drums, especially for house music. These last 2 pads control. This one controls the pads, it turns them on, and this one controls a riser that it turns on. So here's what the pads sound like. And then here's what the riser sounds like as well. So the dials up here control various effects for each different instrument. So if I start with the pads, I'll turn them back on. Here I have a control for the pads, which sort of opens a filter, which you can see down there and you can hear. It also sends it more to the reverb as well. And this essentially just turns up and down the volume and also affects sort of grain delay, which you probably won't be able to hear through the phone. So next I will just do the drum the drum control. So if I turn the drums back on, over here I've got 3 dials that control different effects for the drums. This just controls the volume, so I can turn the volume up and down. This does a sort of bit crusher or redux in Ableton, and this is like a low pass filter essentially. So that allows for, again, more performance. That included with the pads, I can perform the drums in a number of ways, even though it is only one sort of drum pattern essentially. Because it's house music, these offer different types of performance, which is typical in the genre. If I start one of the bassline patterns, up here I've got some controls for it. You might not be able to hear the bass too well when it's just a sub, but this is a low pass filter, so I can open it up and you can probably hear it a bit better. This is a send to the delay bus, so I'll turn it up. Which you should be able to hear. And then up here in the top right we have some global controls. So if I turn the bass on with the kick, here we have a tempo control, which I can turn up, speed it up. And then slow it back down. And then here I have a sort of global low pass filter. So if I want to sort of filter everything for some moments in the performance, I have the ability to do so. Then over here I have a control for an sort of step sequence arpeggiator that I have, which controls the dry wet of sending it to a reverb and a delay, as well as a filter there. And then just quickly over here I have 2 different elements that can be played live using the keyboard. So this is more of like a textural type sound. It's like a spectral resonator being fed through some other effects, which you can hear there, so some more textural moments. And here are sort of more melodic monophonic synth, which also has some controls with the modulation wheel here, which can be played live. I don't have any clips pre-composed, so I can just play it live on top of everything else. And then other than that, there are some sort of automated modulations going on for each instrument, which I won't talk too much about, but there are some stuff over here. For instance, I've got these resonators that are being controlled by various LFOs with some sort of beat repeats that the arpeggiator and the clap are going to, which sort of emphasize beat 4 and create some cool effects. And there's various stuff throughout each instrument. So the bass is also a step sequencer, which I could adjust, and there's also some bass patterns that I have written myself in MIDI. I'll do a short little demonstration now of how it could be performed and how I might perform it for the short improvisation test.